Today, we will discuss Chapter 44 and the first part of Chapter 45 of Shastra, covering planetary psychology and other aspects of shame and other states. We're going to be looking directly at the ancient source texts today. And we're not just treating them as historical artifacts, but really as these incredibly sophisticated manuals of human and cosmic psychology. So here's our agenda for this explainer. We'll kick things off with Chapter 44 and the ascent after death. Then we'll move right into Chapter 45 to explore planetary psychology. After that, we'll break down verse 5 on shame and hunger, verse 6 on thirst and happiness, and finally wrap up with the practical calculations. Section 4, Chapter 44 Overview, the macro context. Before we dive into the psychology, Chapter 44 really establishes the ultimate physical reality, right? Mortality. When we look at the original Sanskrit text from verses 43 to 45, we find this absolutely fascinating formula for what happens after death. It says that planets placed in the 12th, 7th, 6th, or 8th houses actually dictate the soul's ascent. For example, Jupiter brings the soul to heaven. The moon or Venus, they direct it to the world of the manes, or the ancestors. Mars or the sun points right back to Earth, which means rebirth, and Mercury or Saturn indicates hell. Now, if these houses are completely empty, we then look to the decanate lords. Those are the rulers of 1/3 of a zodiac sign, specifically related to the 6th and 8th houses. So the takeaway here is that these planets aren't just giant rocks floating in the sky, they are literally the administrators of a soul's destiny. Moving on to Section 2, Avastas, planetary psychology states. So, having established physical fate, Maharishi Parashara pivots sharply into our inner world, and the core concept here is the avasta, which translates to a state or condition. Parashara really wants us to understand that planets are absolutely not static forces. Just like us humans, planets experience intense emotional states based on their environment. Think about it. When placed in a hostile chart environment, a planet suffers, but when it's surrounded by friends, it thrives. This is crucial because a depressed planet simply cannot give joyous results. Its internal state dictates the external reality it manifests for you. Which brings us to Section 3, Verse 5, the states of shame and hunger. Let's look really closely at the diagnostic criteria for a planet's emotional well-being here. The Sanskrit verse begins, Lajjito garvitas traiva, kshuditas trushitas taka. When we parse that verse, we isolate two critical words. First, lajjita, which translates to shamed or ashamed. Second, kshutita, which translates to hungered or starved. Now think about what these words mean in a real human context. Shame is that heavy state of wanting to hide, right? It's a loss of dignity, a feeling of fundamental wrongness. Hunger, on the other hand, is a state of acute deprivation, a desperate craving for sustenance that just isn't there. When a planet enters these states, it's operating from a place of profound, deep emotional deficit. So you might be wondering, how exactly does a planet become shamed or hungry? Well, the text is highly specific. A planet enters lajjita, or shame, in the 5th house when it's associated with a lunar node, the Sun, Saturn, or Mars. The practical effect of this is honestly devastating. It causes an aversion to God, loss of intelligence, and this heavy listlessness. On the flip side, a planet enters kshuhita, or hunger, if it's placed in an enemy's sign or heavily aspected by enemies. It is literally starved of resources. And in a person's life, this manifests as a downfall due to grief, intense financial distress, and an eclipsed mind. Ultimately, the planet's starvation becomes the need of starvation. All right, Section 4, Verse 6, the states of thirst and happiness. Building on those deficits, Verse 6 outlines two entirely different states for us. The source text reads, Jalarashu stita keta mudita sa prokurtita. Right here, Parashara is mapping the exact conditions that cause planetary consciousness to feel either deep deprivation or profound joy. Breaking down the Sanskrit for this one, Trushita means thirsting or parched, and mudita means happy or delighted. Now, a thirsty planet is very distinct from a hungry one. Thirst implies being surrounded by something you cannot consume. You're craving fulfillment, but you're completely unable to reach it. A happy planet, conversely, is fully nourished, safe, and comfortable. Astrologically speaking, a planet is trushta, or thirsty, if it's placed in a watery sign, but is aspected by a malefic, and crucially, not aspected by any benefic. Imagine being stranded in the middle of the ocean, completely surrounded by water, but totally unable to drink. That is exactly the psychology we're dealing with here. And the practical outcome for the native? diseases through association with females, being led into wicked deeds, loss of wealth, and physical weakness. Conversely, a planet is mudita, or happy, if it's in a friendly sign, or conjunct or aspected by a benefic or conjunct Jupiter. It feels supported and loved. The practical result of that is beautiful. The native gains residences, clothes, ornaments, happiness from lands, royal favor, and the acquisition of true wisdom. A happy planet freely shares its joy.
Section 5. Practical diagrams and calculations.
Now we're going to transition from the theory into practical application. Parshar provides these really rigorous formulas, so practitioners don't have to just guess or rely on intuition. Looking at how the ancient Sanskrit translates to the traditional diamond chart, you can clearly see how this is physically mapped out. For instance, lajita, or shame, occurs in the 5th house, marked sut or sutta, which relates to progeny. If a planet is sitting right there in that specific diamond with a malefic, it is diagnosed as shamed, and that deeply colors the native's intellect with that planetary trauma. But Parashara goes even deeper with Sayanadi Avastas. These are 12 highly specific states like sleeping or shining. And the math here is incredibly precise. Here's how it works. First, you note the star number occupied by the planet. Second, you multiply that by the planet's assigned status number. Third, you multiply that result by the planet's Navamsha, which is its specific fractional chart position. Fourth, you add 3 specific variables, the birth star number, the Kati, which is a specific ancient measure of the birth time, and the ascendant's distance from Aries. Finally, you divide that massive sum by 12. The remainder you get dictates the exact psychological state. Let's actually crack the code using this specific example provided in the source text for the sun. Okay, so the sun is in star number 3, so S equals 3. Its planet number is 1, so P equals 1. It's in the 3rd Navamsa, making N equal 3. Multiply those together. 3 times 1 times 3 equals 9. Next, we look at the birth variables. The birth star is 3, the time is 31 Gatis, and the ascendant is the 8th sign, Scorpio. Add these up. 3 plus 31 plus 8 equals 42. Now, combine the two parts. 9 plus 42 gives us 51. Finally, we divide 51 by 12. That gives us 4 with a remainder of 3. And that remainder is the key. A remainder of 3 tells the practitioner that the sun is in the 3rd avasta, known as Nitrapani. This math perfectly, beautifully translates astronomical data into a profound psychological diagnosis. And this brings us to a really profound realization about the Parashara Shastra. You see, it is absolutely not just about rocks orbiting in space. It's about recognizing the living, feeling archetypes that construct our reality. These mathematics from the 8th century actually serve as a brilliant bridge to modern self-discovery. It forces us to ask a tough question. If the planetary energies residing within your own chart are operating from a place of hunger, shame, or thirst, how is their hidden, silent psychology dictating the everyday reality of your life? Understanding their states might just be the key to changing our own.